Hello, I'm here to talk just for a few minutes about the overlaps and connections that I saw between Elliot Long's Elusive Intersections and, let me get the other name of this article, Valentine's, the categories themselves. Um, the first thing that I wanted to sort of talk you through was some of this terminology that you're getting on here about the queer community or the gay community. I noticed words like butch, femme, stone butch, dyke, queen, femme queens, gay, lesbian, straight, and if you identify as a heterosexual person and don't have a lot of contact with the homosexual or intersexual community, a lot of that probably seems like I don't know, almost like stigmatized words, like you can't call someone gay, for example. I have to tell you a funny story while I've got you on here. Um, my mother actually called me on the phone one time and asked me if my roommates were alternative, and I was kind of baffled for a second, and I said, "Alternative? Do you mean gay?" And she said, "Yeah, I mean gay. I just didn't want to be offensive." And I said, "Mother, there's nothing offensive about being gay." But she couldn't even make herself say the word gay because she thought she was typecasting or stereotyping, just like the word nigger from earlier in our country's history. But calling someone a gay or a lesbian, as long as you don't mean anything malicious behind it, is just that. You can call them a gay or lesbian. I have friends that I call dyke, butch, femme. I have boyfriends that I call faggot. I mean, as long as you're not meaning it from a malicious place, most gay people or queer people won't get mad at you. Even the word queer is kind of an umbrella term, like gay is. It sort of includes everybody, but sometimes people, when I say the word queer, I actually mean people outside of the gay community, but I mean like allies and supporters of gay people. They also have to have a queer mentality in order to support the queer movement. And so some of these words that they're getting at, transgender, transsexuality, dyke, queer, woman-centric, the words that you're going to be seeing here, they're all trying to investigate this idea that there's just one or two things going on here. There's man, there's woman, there's gay, there's straight. Both of these articles sort of try to collapse that idea and show you that where there's men and women, there's also this line that goes between the two, right? And where there's straight and gay, there's also this line that sort of connects the two. And very few people are on either extreme of these. There are very few people who are either gay or straight. Everybody sort of lines up somewhere along that continuum or can occupy across their lifetime several different points in that continuum. And so in one of the articles, I think it was the Long article, he talks about gender constancy. And I love that idea because it sort of says that in our culture we expect people to identify themselves early on as boy or girl and then to stick with that identification through their whole lives. And what these two articles sort of imply is that that's very static. It's very difficult to stay within that boundary. If you're a person who's very creative or who thinks outside of the box, then it's very difficult to stay within those two lines. So I really liked his article, and I mean Long's article, because of the way that he was able to talk about the transgender and the transsexual community as people who are anywhere along this border, not just on either side, but people who register and acknowledge that they're somewhere along that continuum that goes between those two things. Let's see. And all of everything that Long was saying about his difficulty transitioning and the difficulty of getting psychiatrist notes, I wanted to bring out this sort of idea of categories in Long's work. So we had Valentine's work called The Categories Themselves, but it made so much sense in the context of looking at Long's article, because in Long's article he was talking about this discrepancy that exists between the way that individual people categorize themselves and the way that institutions like the government categorize people, or the church, for example. So you've got all of these people living their everyday lives who recognize and identify themselves as gay or straight or whatever, but there's also all these other people who identify as transgender, transsexual, stone butch, femme, queer, dyke. And the government and the church don't recognize things like that, so on their little surveys and things that they fill out, you're gay or straight, or you're transgendered, but there's no room for gender inconstancy. And so the way that institutions are kind of broadcasting and marketing gender isn't really living up to the lived experiences of the people who are gendered in this country. And I liked how Long and Elliot both brought those out. Sorry, Long and Valentine both brought out that idea that you don't have to stay one your whole life. There's no rule that says you have to always be a man or always be a woman or always be straight or always be gay or whatever. You can always be in transition if you want. And so, yeah, Valentine gets into talking about intersectionality. Intersectionality is an idea that we are all people who are composed of lots of different parts. And so let's pretend like you've got black and white here, right? And so you're maybe almost all black, but you've got some white in you, so you're about right here. Then you've got gay and straight here. And maybe you're not quite all the way gay, but you're not straight, so maybe you're here. You start to see all these lines coming across this picture that I'm drawing, and it's gay, straight, black, white, young, old, American, African American, American Indian, right? You've got all these different identities that exist in our country today, and we all have to identify where we fit on each one of those identities. And you put all of those crosshatches together, and in the center, or off to the left side, or up here somewhere, that's where you are on all of these intersections of identities. And so they, both of those articles really get into talking about that. Long's article brings out age, race, national origin, class, and gender, and Valentine's article also points to those things as identifying trademarks, things that we can't deny in ourselves and things that we have to sort of self-identify. And so just like the gender categories that we've been exploring, it doesn't mean the same thing to say I'm white, gay, female as it does to say I'm a black lesbian. They mean two very different things, even though they're both women. They're not identifying themselves as women, they're identifying themselves as race and then gender or sexuality. So listening to the way that people identify themselves and picking up on what they prioritize, their age, their race, their national origin, their class, or their gender, it sort of helps you to understand how they're seeing themselves and through what prisms and through what lenses they're allowing themselves to perform or to act. Yeah, okay, so I think that covers just about everything that I wanted to get through with the overlaps between the Long and the Valentine's article, and I'll be interested to hear you in comments to this video or on our discussion board this week. I'll be interested to hear your responses to the Valentine article. It was a little bit up there, but I'm really interested in hearing your responses to Elliot Long's autobiographical piece on transgendering from female to male. This might be the first exposure that some of you guys have had to this kind of concept, and so I'm really interested to see, with the work that we've already done in gender in the weeks 1 through 3, where are you now, and how is this idea of transgenderism sitting with you? Do the readings that we've read so far this week support this idea of transgenderism, or were you totally blown away by it, the mentality that goes in behind it? And so I'm interested in knowing how you respond to Elliot Long's very personal story of his sharing, and the way that he sort of interweaves very scholastic and academic facts inside of his personal story. And that's kind of what I'm asking you guys to do in your discussion board posts and in your events wall postings, is to, whenever you give me a personal fact, always come back and give me a scholarly fact or something from the text to back that up and to show me how you're connecting and what connections you're making and what conclusions you can draw from those kinds of connections. And so this may even serve as a really good model for the kind of writing that I'm asking you to do if you choose to share personal details about your life on the events walls. So I say a lot. I'm very shiny in the sun there, and I'm hoping that you are enjoying the class so far. Many of you have approached me and said that you are, and I'm very glad to hear it. I think that we're finally getting the walls down to where they should be. I want to see a little bit more participation from some of you, and a lot of you guys are doing really well, like Rhonda Jean, and I think I've got a list here. Kim and Rhonda Jean and the other Kim. I mean, you guys are like chatting away. Courtney, I see you on there a lot. And Charla, but some of you guys are kind of in the background still, and so I need you guys to move forward and start putting yourself out there in the conversation too, and maybe even just referring back to the text if you don't have anything personal to add, or referring to something that you've learned in another class. So the idea here is to continue building knowledge rather than to disintegrate the conversation into I believe or I think or stuff like that. We want to sort of keep the conversation up at a scholarly level, and I think a lot of you guys are doing a great job doing that. But whenever you feel the urge to just talk about what you've experienced in your personal life, that's more of a confession, and we're looking for scholarly banter. So I trust that we're going to keep moving toward that in the future. I see this class as a training program to sort of induct you into scholarly conversation online and on listservs and through email chatter with professors and things like that. And so I'm glad I can be here to help you along that journey. I'm rambling. I'm going to go. I'll see you guys maybe later on this week with another update, but probably next week. See you later.